2025. Crissy, Dave, what a great way to start the new year with you guys. Thank you so much. I'm so happy.
Happy New Year.
Say Happy New Year, Dave. Come on. Don't just shake your head at us.
Way too late for Happy New Year. The first.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Hang on. It is January 5th as we're talking today. I actually had to look at the calendar. I have no idea what day it is anymore. That's what happens during the holidays. But we had that horrific terror attack in New Orleans at 3:15 a.m. Central Time here in the United States, in New Orleans, Louisiana. A person who had been become an extremist. I've seen videos of people who knew him before, served in the same unit as him in Alaska, for example. They're like, he was just a normal guy. And then he became radicalized. And I have some distinct theories on that. And he decided that he bought into the ISIS extremist ideology and we all must die. Jewish, Christian, doesn't matter, Western ideology, wokeism, whatever term you want to throw at it, it's all evil because all women, Crissy, you must be wearing a full head to toe, as we've seen coming out of Afghanistan and now Syria with their new groups, no education, no windows in Afghanistan, so women can't even see themselves in public is what's happening. That's the ideology this guy, this terrorist, this mass murderer bought into, and he drove his car down crowded Bourbon Street to
the Center City, right?
Yes.
That's the closest place that he could inflict his beliefs onto, right? Because first he was going to kill his family, right? And then he was like, oh no, that's not a big enough thing. So where can I go? Most people, again, we saw this is Vegas or New Orleans, right? Because that's where all the sinners are, right? And particularly in the South, New Orleans is seen as like where you go to have a good time and nobody, it's like whatever happens in Vegas, but it's like even New Orleans, like you don't even remember what happened. Trust me, baby, you don't remember, right? Like no one remembers. So he went there.
Do that to you.
I mean, have you ever seen what is in a hurricane drink? Yeah. Like you don't, if you survive that from a toxicology point of view, like let alone remember. So he went there specifically, which I think is interesting because I don't think people who don't understand that ideology of ISIS and Islamist extremists, it's like New Orleans wasn't the target because New Orleans is special. It was the closest place that he could inflict the largest impact on that represents everything that he hates, which is sexual freedom, alcohol, like women. LGBTQ, women, everything is happening there, right? So he's like, where can I go to totally fuck that up? New Orleans. He's in Texas. It's a 3-hour drive, right? So there you go.
To focus on that really core basic idea that I find to be so deeply offensive. Obviously, I care as much about every group that they hate. But the basic idea that women shouldn't even be educated and should not be seen at all out in public. I mean, it's this idea that women are like a form of property, a chattel, to use legal language, right? Yes. Of just a piece of property that we have for whatever purpose, I guess. It's just mind-boggling to me. And the
isn't that what fucking MAGA is kind of like the weird like connection between the two? Again, we have a weird Venn diagram here of like MAGA fucking dickhead kicker guy from whatever, the Chiefs telling women everywhere they've got to just get back in the fucking kitchen, butt curve. So he's saying that the MAGA agenda is also telling women to shut the fuck up. So they're not too far off ISIS. And here we have ISIS attacks or people who are ISIS ideology, like attacking America. And then we're all like, oh my God, they're bad. I'm like, fuck you, you're bad. You're the ones who it's illegal to get an abortion in the state of Louisiana. You cannot get an abortion there. Like, fuck you, dudes. Like, sorry. If you want to go there with me and talk about women, ISIS and MAGA, I don't know. There's like a double-sided coin.
Well, I do. So I do see it in layers, though. So there's,
okay.
And I mean this, right? Because I think about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot. I've gotten attacked.
It's an onion of sexism.
It is because, well, it's like degrees of like in criminal law, right? We have degrees of this stuff. ISIS is the most extreme form. That ideology of the woman has to wear a burqa, right? Where it's head to toe. The eye slit is so narrow, you wonder how they can even see where they're going.
And even that has like a lace or a mesh over it, by the way.
That's right. So you can't even see their eyes. And there is a difference. And then you get killed and stoned. I mean, we just had another honor killing here in the United States. There was another one in Canada. Honor killings and that's here. So they're bringing that ideology with them. And that's something I have been very consistent about. While immigration is very important to this country, we do need to filter out when we know that somebody is coming here or they begin to profess it after they've come here, they should not stay here, right? That should be an immediate, swift deportation. And I apologize to my friends on the left when I say George Maloney got it right about that one leader in Italy after the October 7th attacks who said, we need to start doing that in our streets here. And she said, you out tomorrow. And he got kicked out of the country in Italy. I mean, we can disagree with Giorgia Meloni about all kinds of things, but the point is if you're going to come here and say, I think I should kill all of you,
right?
Your way of life is wrong, and we want to destroy you. Canada's suffering this worse than the United States right now. England is really dealing with it. France is having a hell of a time.
France is really struggling with it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to have a conversation about it without it sounding racist, right? But the truth of the matter is like, you can say, I personally think, that those ideals of extreme Islamic terror are not the same as being a Muslim who can be considered a French person. Do you know what I mean?
Totally different.
But we don't have that conversation. We just have people screaming at each other because
I don't believe Islamophobia. I can't talk about getting that guy out of this country who's wanting to immigrate here and just murdered his daughter on camera, right? Because she wasn't going to go back to whichever country in the Middle East and marry somebody that they had arranged a marriage with. And she was dating a black guy here in the United States, and her mom and dad killed her, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, you can't, that doesn't belong here. I'm so sorry. You're not welcome here. We are a pluralistic society. Sorry.
We are, but there's also a predatory aspect of the New Orleans thing in particular. It's women, but also there is, and I mean, we don't talk about it. I got basically canceled by everybody for saying like, okay, by the way, did you know that like Islamist extremists are fucking racist? They don't even like black people. Like, anyone heard about Sudan? Like, are you guys good? Like, are we cool? Because I noticed that like a lot of the black community was trying to talk about, racism and felt a propensity towards Palestine or whatever. And I'm like, okay, but hang on a second. Like, if you just want to operate in, like, have you ever met or have you been to a Middle Eastern country or traveled the world at all? They're extremely racist, by the way. And there is, in Asia, in the Middle East, the lighter your skin is, the better you are. Let's be very clear. That exists in Asia. That's what you see in Thailand. And I first discovered this years ago traveling. I was watching people in Thailand walk around with white cream all over their face. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, why are they walking around with this? Like, do I not have the right sun? They're skin lightening. And my friend who is Vietnamese said, oh yeah, no, because the Chinese called me jungle Asian. And I was like, wait, what? What is that? She's like, oh, no. The whiter you are, the more pure Chinese, the higher quality you are. Then when I worked on a film festival with Saudi Arabian government, like there was an issue with hiring a Filipino gentleman as the host. And I said, well, what is the issue? My producer, who was Vietnamese, leaned over and she goes, they use Filipinos as indentured servants there. So like, that's going to be weird. And I'm like, what? So there is like, if you're talking about layers to Islamist extremists, yeah, then you drive over to New Orleans, a predominantly black city with loose morals and wild women and a representation of all the sinners. Like, yeah, that's why he went there. It was close, and it was the representation of all the things that we don't want to talk about.
Right. And he killed 14 people. That is a mass murder. And it was done with horrific terroristic intent, unlike Luigi.
With chemicals they have not even figured out how were brought into the country under the radar. He had bombs he burnt down Airbnb in St. Roch, which is like just up the street from the French border. I live there. My home is there. Like, I know this city very well, which is why
we'd have to meet there and record an episode, is what you're saying?
Sure. I mean, it's also why you'll see that there was a lot of New Orleans natives and residents that weren't in the French Quarter at 3 a.m. on a New Year's Eve, because the majority of us would not want to be there. It was majority of people out of state, unless you had to work or you were performing. Like, a lot of people would be invited, but I would say a good portion of New Orleanians would not want to be in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve. Now, that we also learn from New Orleanians everywhere is that it's not ever been secure. And they've had multiple warnings, multiple things from the FBI to say, you guys host more events and more, expos and more parties than any other city in the world, and you're not secure, which is fucking true. Because you could be walking down Frenchman Street, where all the bars and jazz bars are, and people are driving by, and you're in the street, and there's a giant pothole, and there is no security, and there is nobody there. The day after this attack, local people were filming what it was like in the Quarter. Cars were still driving down Bourbon Street.
You bring up a point that I think is really important when you talk about the security, and it has to do with the amount of absolute misinformation and disinformation that came out over the 48 hours. This is truly one of the problems of the free internet and social media, is people spout absolute garbage. Our country is not taught anything about how to discern fact from propaganda. As a matter of fact, we resist in this country teaching our kids the difference between fact and propaganda.
Except in Finland, they're teaching them how to dissect propaganda as it is on social media and in the news.
And it's for years. It's a years-long process in Finland. And what's so important about that is you heard, I've heard it from highly educated people. They didn't have the bollards up, and so they failed. It's like, no, they had cars parked where the bollards were. The problem is the entire security structure was wrong. And so the guy just drove right around the car. But we also had the crazy, ill-informed aspects of the right claiming that he was an immigrant. He wasn't.
Immediately. That was the first tweet, right, from Donald Trump.
That
he was an immigrant. Not only was he not an immigrant, he was a member of the military and from Texas. Like, that's a trifecta of MAGA joy, is to claim that you're military, you're from Texas.
He was dark-skinned, Crissy.
But he was dark-skinned, correct. Okay, sorry. So they don't want to claim him. Got it. Right? With the name, the name will have sent everybody into a total tizzy, even though the dude's American, but cool. And I think what's so weird about that is watching as a person. Now, keep in mind, you guys, I was doing live reporting from Paris with gunshots going on outside my fucking hotel room during the Paris attacks, which was a multi-pronged, not proper, but legitimately multi-pronged ISIS attack on Paris, where 130 people were murdered and hundreds more were hurt. And the immediacy of the French government to shut things down and to get us all up in our rooms and lock us in and have armed guards everywhere, and to try and do that across a large city with a lot of people, versus New Orleans, where if you just even listen to the 911 operator that they keep playing on CNN, she's like, there's a problem on Bourbon Street. That is classic fucking New Orleans. And then you watch the footage of, city council person versus Leon Panetta, talking about, well, the FBI knew this. Oh, well, the city council people are like, we don't know where there was the security. We don't even know where the bollards are. They're being fixed. It's like, you guys are all pieces of shit that we have hired to do a fucking job that you can't do. And the city council and the mayor's trying to say that the bollards are being fixed and they don't know why they couldn't secure it. It's that is the biggest intersection in the entire fucking city. It's Canal Street to turn into Bourbon. It's the largest intersection. You have one police car there. Okay? Are you high? And it's New Year's Eve. That's, in theory, everyone's high, but are you crazy that you had one? You could have put a garbage truck there. They don't even pick up the trash until everyone's done trashing the fucking streets there. There was a million things that could have been done. They had the Sugar Bowl going on. They had all these people in town.
So hang on a second, though. I want to ask you guys, Crissy, you're in Paris, France. So what did New Year look like in Paris this year?
We were where the Arc de Triomphe was. Is they did a light show and they did fireworks, which was cool. But as a person who was in the Paris attacks, and as a person who's an American who's now experienced multiple terrorist attacks and in my mind, I'm like, okay, they have a lot of armed guards. And what they did was they had the military police and their military vehicles all around the circumference of the Arc de Triomphe, right? Obviously. What they didn't do was to get out of the area. First of all, they had, I think, the right intentions in shutting all of the metros down and then reopening them, right? But what they didn't have was enough people and guards doing traffic control. The failure I saw in that part was traffic control, because Zephyr and I were in this, there's hordes of people. They all have to like dart off in different directions. There's mobs, there's like people smushing each other. Zephyr and I got caught in like a mosh pit of humanity. Not to mention there's still construction going on in the city because of all the stuff they did pre and post Olympics. So there was not enough traffic control for humans, which I think caused more issue than the precautions they took in place. Was obviously they didn't want everyone rushing in, right? To like whatever, but they just didn't think through some of that.
But they were ready for, it sounds like they were ready for what happened in New Orleans.
They were more prepared than New Orleans was.
That's kind of my point. But you partied and had a good time. Dave, you're on the east coast of the northeast of the United States, yep. New England, as we would call it.
Yep.
What did it look like there? Did you go out at all on New Year's?
I have no idea. I was hiding in the basement. I hate New Year's Eve. Absolutely.
Do you? Yeah. Are you like a little dog? You're like, I don't.
Not a fan. What you posted of the fireworks by the Arc de Triomphe, that looked awesome. I could have dragged myself out of the basement for that celebration, but no. I was amateur night. I was hiding in the basement here in Rhode Island. Yeah.
But have you ever partied in Boston on New Year's?
Sure. Generally, I would say that those security measures made sense overall. When I was thinking about the New Orleans attack, my mind did go to post-game around Fenway Park during the summer. The ballpark wedged into an old neighborhood where the streets aren't really made for cars anyway. And I can't believe that the perimeter for no vehicles isn't a few blocks further out at Fenway during the summer. And the fact that New Orleans hasn't figured this out, but we're 23, 24 years post 9/11, how they haven't figured it out in that time. Not that we want to go back to, the immediate period right after when things were probably a little bit too tight, but you haven't figured out in this city where there are gatherings and parties and parades and drunk people walking around all the time, how to prevent that kind of thing from happening. It's sad and it's unacceptable.
Isn't that the thing we know? Like, even all of us are not CIA, FBI, detective, whatever. That we know now that the likelihood on major events and major holidays where more groups of people are gathered, those are the big times. So New Year's Eve in any city in America, where there's going to be a gathering, should have extra protection.
The idea that New Orleans just was not prepared, it seems like. And to your point, Crissy, when the elected officials are complete, if I may use this language, morons, that's your job. You should know this. But wait, how many of these city council people get that job for the cush, for the kickback, for the whatever? They just haven't been caught yet.
You got New Year's Eve, and I see city council, and I see state representatives, and I see the governor of fucking Louisiana, that piece of shit. And they're all on there like, well, we don't know how this happened. We're preparing for the Super Bowl. I'm like, fuck you. You fucking know. You didn't do shit. And don't blame the FBI, because Christopher Wray's hair has been on fucking fire for years saying, hey, there's going to be lone wolf incidents. It's not that we have to like Christopher Wray, but it hasn't been like he hasn't been saying lone wolf incidents alert. In 2019, the FBI went to New Orleans government and said, you guys are still a problem. 2019, before COVID, you guys need to figure your shit out, because you host too many events. You have too many parades of people in public. If your whole thing is that you attract tourism as your main source of income, then you have to protect the people. And here we have 14 people, mostly not from the city of New Orleans, who are murdered.
Remind me again, how much of the Hurricane Katrina money was embezzled, spent, blown?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So
didn't half the people there the elected officials, didn't half of them get convicted?
Correct. Yeah. And you've got a new they're kicking out the mayor because she's corrupt. You've got the lead candidate for mayor, who I think has the potential to be a good mayor. But the first thing she's doing, Helena Marino, if you're listening and watching, you're probably fucking not, because you've never answered one of my fucking emails, and I've sent a lot to the city council. She gets on CNN. I'm watching it from fucking Paris, and she's like,
wait a second.
she goes, what?
You sent a lot to the city council.
Email them all the time, because I am a Karen, but I'm a California Karen because I C-A-R-E care. So I'm a Karen with a C, okay? No. Like, because I C-A-R-E care.
No, Crissy, you got labeled after probably the 4th or 5th email.
Right. And you're shocked they're not replying. That looks like my Twitter outbox. Like, why aren't you replying to me? Why won't you answer me? It's not the way to go, Crissy.
I send 3 emails a day letting you know what's wrong with this city.
To be fair, the majority of them are about the ferry system, so okay. But like, she's running announced her candidacy for mayor, and the first thing she does on CNN is go, really, they're pointing the fingers at us locally, but was there something we should have known about this guy? Should the federal government have alerted us more? What? Bitch, it doesn't fucking matter. Sorry to call you a bitch. I shouldn't do that, woman to woman. But bitch, 14 people died because you guys couldn't put a dump truck in front of Canal Street and Bourbon Street, and that's Leon Panetta or the FBI or Christopher Wray's fault? No fucking way. I will not let you get away with that. And you're about to launch a mayoral campaign? Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here.
And that's probably part of the problem, right? She's more interested in covering her ass for political damage control than she is to actually look at the problem, address the problem, and fix it as quickly as possible for the future. Because there are going to be more events and parades in New Orleans before we know it, right? Every night, pretty much.
And this is why, while it hasn't turned out the way people wanted here in California, we passed those term limits. Because we're sick to death of these politicians. We just keep shoving them back into office because they lie, cheat, steal, whatever. But what happened in California with term limits? So every time people bring up to me, we need term limits. I'm like, be careful what you wish for, because in California, what's happened with term limits is the lobbyists run the state capital, Sacramento, because nobody is in office long enough to build the Pelosi control, for example, at the House of Representatives in DC. So in Sacramento, it's the lobbyists that have all the control because they're the ones who have the institutional knowledge. And so when you serve 2 terms in the state assembly, then you serve 2 terms in the state Senate is the common path here in California. And then you go, serve 2 terms on your local city council, or you run for mayor if it's one of the cities in California that has an elected mayor. And or you run for 2 terms as a county supervisor. And so they play the game differently, but it has not worked out the way that we wanted it to here in California, where, again, you have powerful unelected people, the lobbyists, who have the institutional knowledge. And worse, and then once you've termed out of your jobs as a politician, you're collecting the pension now. And if you've done it like the city of Los Angeles, it's a well-paid pension, which is why Kevin De Leon wouldn't step down, I believe, after he was caught saying horrific racist. He's Hispanic, immigrant, child of immigrants, leading, Latino in the California legislature. He was the Senate pro tem, I believe. But he was caught on tape making horrific racist statements about Black people. And everybody else stepped down who was caught on that tape. He didn't. He served out to the end of his term instead of stepping down. Didn't serve worth a crap as a city council member, but doesn't step down. And so he collects his pension now, which I believe is north of $200,000 a year. And he never showed up for the last however much of his term because they wouldn't let him, because it was so disruptive to the city council because of what he had done. And we keep doing this to ourselves. We do this. We elect what we deserve. This is what keeps happening. We buy snake oil, and we do it from these people who tell us what we want to hear. It's very Machiavellian, which is not a good thing, by the way. There's a whole contingent right now that think it's a great thing to lie and get people to buy in, and it's absolutely wrong. So we, instead of hiring the people to represent us who are actually interested in serving us, we have Nancy Pelosi's portfolio in 2024 doing better than any hedge fund on Wall Street because they still are allowed to inside trade legally. They serve on these committees, they hear what's coming, they go do trades. There are whole like websites and systems set up now where you can just watch our legislators trades. It's after the fact, so you're not going to make as much as they will, but it's absolutely gobsmacking that this is allowed to continue, and we sucker into it. We forget that they're the oligarchs for the most part. Not all of them. There are good politicians out there. There really are. But the problem is we have so many bad ones who are enriching themselves, enriching their friends for a lobbying or a post job after whatever their political office is to go enrich themselves. So it's not a public service, which is what it was supposed to have been and really was for so many years. Now, there always were problems that don't ever get me wrong. There's no make America great again. But the point is public service is not very much part of the equation anymore. It's about how do I get rich? And so we do this to ourselves. New Orleans is suffering because of it. People died likely because of it. We all are suffering right now because of it. Because when you look at it, if we can do all of these things as a country, but we've got how many homeless people? LA has 70,000. Karen Bass is making headway, but everybody's getting rich off of it. So we're back to that. Why is everybody getting rich on dealing with the homeless problem? We fail because we allow this to happen. And when it's time to elect people, too often it's like, well, I have two choices. I don't like either of them. And by the way,
they don't show up.
They don't show up.
New Orleans, they don't vote.
I've looked at running an office before. You guys know this. And every time that happens, I go, I don't care. I don't want to, I'm not in it for me. I don't want to go and have to raise money. If you're not wealthy and self-funding, most of your time is fundraising.
You've talked about this before to that point, and it blew my mind the first time you told me when you looked into running for office. I think it may have been either for Sacramento or for Congress, and the number you came back with, that the consultant that you had talked to about the amount of money you would have had to raise. I mean, and I pay attention to this. I already knew it was going to be crazy. It blew my effing mind what that actual number was.
And it's much worse now.
And we need to find, we need serious campaign finance reform. To your earlier point on term limits, there is a happy medium, right? You don't want to, these people need to gain institutional knowledge so as our representatives, they can get stuff done and back the lobbyists off, another part of finance reform. But you can't kick them out of Sacramento or the State House in Boston or Providence or Albany after just 2 terms. That's way too short for that job. But you shouldn't have career criminals, politicians.
It should be a limit of a total number of years, right? Not number of terms, because there's so many different ways of getting around that. I just explained it: state assembly, then state senate, then city council, then county supervisor, then, and they go serve on this board and that board and this other board. And it's all like grift. It appears to be, at least. But we need to use a prime number so it doesn't correlate with election cycles. So one party doesn't get to benefit over another, but use a prime number. And I like the number of either 17 or 23. And that's the total number of years. And that needs to be that way for our Supreme Court. It needs to be that way for our politicians in DC. It needs to be that way for the politicians in our state houses. The state houses, that's up to the individual states to come up with what that number is. But for the federal government, that's an amendment to the Constitution, which, don't give me the crap, it's impossible to do. Yes, everything seems hard when you allow them to divide and conquer us, because that's what they do. They divide and conquer us. And it's the oligarchs versus the rest of us. And here, if the rest of us decide, I'm sick of this crap from you people, it's easy for us to get a 2/3 vote that says, we are changing the Constitution. You in DC, you senators, you Congress people, grand total can serve 23 years in DC. Between the House and the Senate. So like Adam Schiff, look, I support Adam Schiff, moves from the House, goes to the Senate. He can serve 50 freaking years the way that it's going right now. I think that's wrong. And I don't think it's okay. And I don't think it's good for our country. I don't think it's good for a democracy. So we as the people who this country is supposedly for, and these politicians are supposed to serve, we just have to get together and fix it. But Dave, what do people listen to? Do they listen to what it's going to take to fix things? Or is it, golly, here's this shiny little object over here, guys. Immigrants bad. Oh, look, caravan coming. Oh, no.
It's amazing how good they are at dividing and conquering, to your point. I think about going next door and literally sitting around the campfire around my cousin's fire pit in an area that's very conservative, and there's a little bit of selection bias. A lot of my cousin's buddies are conservative as well. And we actually chat about what we care about. We're not that far off. We're not that divided on a couple points here and there. But then, especially after a couple lagers or whiskeys happen, they start yelling at me that all the liberals are the problem. And they talk about the immigrant family up the street. And I'm like, no, we were just in agreement on so many things 25 minutes and 3 whiskeys ago. And now it's the liberals' fault and the brown people's fault. And I'm like, no, it's those in power and the moneyed class and the oligarchs who have convinced you that it's that shiny object, you effing liberal, and that effing immigrant.
A common enemy, right? Like, where can we other the others? And that's your enemy. And if it's Jewish people or Black people or Muslim people, and no, there's no shades of gray. There's no distinction of like people who are Muslim, who are not terrorists and don't agree with, Islamist extremism. And there's no shades of gray of like Jewish people as a whole. Like, it's just now we're just whoop, like, we let Elon Musk control everything from the keyboard of Twitter. We're like, oh, he like basically destroyed Twitter as a business. I'm like, did he? Or did he just get control of the country that way?
So this is such a big, deep topic. We the three of us all came from radio, right? We did a radio show together on terrestrial radio, owned by one of the big media companies that was allowed to become a big media company because the Republican Congress and Bill Clinton removed the rules that limited the consolidation of media ownership. And this idea that the whole reason we passed laws that limited the consolidation of media ownership is this outcome that we're experiencing. It is literally why we did it. It's the same reason why we didn't allow publicly traded companies on Wall Street to do stock buybacks.
Right.
That was the Reagan era, right? We had all these laws in place to protect us from the oligarchs who want to prey on us to become so wealthy, they're untouchable, and they can live the Elysium life. Remember, that was that first article I wrote about Elon Musk that led to such consternation by the Silicon Valley, elite who thought that he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. And in 2013, I said, no, he's not. I saw right through his gimmick. And it's like we keep doing it to ourselves. There's something inside of our human brain that says, I don't really want to have to think about things. I want to let somebody else control it and control me. And that's just the way it's going to be. And if it's the Protestants versus the Catholics, I get so mad about this. Every time this is where I get mad at my progressive left friends, is everything isn't racism. There is a lot of racism. There's a shit ton of racism in this world. We have a lot of it in various ways. But remember, Northern Ireland, that wasn't black versus white or brown versus yellow or anything of that sort. It was your Catholicism versus Protestantism. They killed each other over that crap. There's something in human nature. It's why we love sports as much as we do. It's because it's the us versus them mentality. We want to be pitted against somebody else, and it takes a higher level of thought to bring ourselves above that. I mean, I go on total right-winger shows all the time. I'll be on Tommy Lauren's show again this week, right? What do I have in common with her? You know what? Probably 95% we actually have in common.
Right.
But the point is the way our system is set up to make money is we have to disagree because that's what's appealing. My very first radio show I ever did was called Smoke Filled World. And it was to talk about literally what we're talking about right now. I was ahead of my time, apparently. And the problem was my ratings, when I would talk about all the things that we have in common, and I would talk about, here's what the left and the right have to say, and here's what they each have right, and here's what they each have wrong. Nobody wants to hear that. So as soon as you pick a side and you start having, a one-sided, I'm liberal and screw everybody, that's what gets the ratings.
Yeah.
People respond to discord. They really do. They love it, and it feeds them, something that makes them feel like they're a part of something, but doesn't force them to engage in critical thinking, which they're overworked and too tired and stressed out to do. And you're like, because I have so many friends now, particularly like one of the best things I ever did was move from California to New Orleans to meet people that I've heard from my entire life of being a liberal in California were the enemy, right? There's so much of that in our country. Whereas like, now I'm like living in New Orleans. I'm like, I was the asshole from California, be like, fuck you. If you voted for Trump, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And now it's like, I know all these people that are Trump voters. I'm like, I actually really like you. I think you're a good person. You're like salt of the earth. Yes. And, I understand why you did that. I can understand why you voted for Trump.
Most people, we can agree on so many things, and they just want government off their back and be able to live their lives. And the freedoms they want sometimes split up at the end, and you could find a way to make a deal of, like, we're not going to go after your Second Amendment quite so hard, as long as you give our lady friends their reproductive rights back. How about start with that? And then you could find some other common ground, like, hey, just let us all have our porn, and then would be fine. It would get to, like, 99% agreement.
Totally. Have your porn, but here's my thing. If you want to, have sex with a woman, then you need to be okay with the fact that you're going to agree to raise her child, that you are not allowing her to abort that she doesn't fucking want. Because I don't want to hear anymore from men, particularly ones who claim to be Christians, who then get women pregnant and didn't wear a condom because it felt so good, and then don't also want to take responsibility and like, that costed so much. I'm like, dude, that 25 seconds that felt so good to you, was boring to her, is now everybody's fucking problem? I don't think so.
So, I mean, there is an easy answer to a lot of these problems, and it has to do with things like once men reach a certain age, anytime they want to have sex, you do a reversible vasectomy. I mean, after our second kid, I got a vasectomy because it's like, okay, we're done. Too old. We can't have more. It's just the easiest thing in the world to do. Why not do it? But they do reversible vasectomies. That's the one thing. The other thing, though, is escrow, bond. Any man who is going to be sexually active has to put money into a bond, buy a bond. And so if they impregnate somebody, that bond is going to pay the child support, the medical care, whatever else, because for their half, right? And unless it was, non-consensual, then it's going to have to pay for 100%.
Which it is a lot, but we're not allowed to say that.
Yes. But you do it that's like firearms. Great. You want to buy something that is semi-automatic, right? Just start there. You want to buy a semi-automatic. First off, you got to get this whole ghost gun thing is total bullshit. And why that's ever been allowed is a joke to me. But you want to buy a semi-automatic firearm. Great. You have to have $100,000 bond on it to buy it. Now, right. The way bonds work, remember, is it's like an insurance policy. You get charged a percentage. So if I have to get $100,000 bond, maybe I have to pay $50 a month. Maybe I have to pay $100 a month. Maybe I have to pay $500 a month. It's an actuarial analysis to determine what the chances are that the bond company is going to actually have to pay out the $100,000 or the $500,000 or the $1 million, whatever that looks like. That doesn't violate your Second Amendment right. You can still buy that unnecessary firearm that you want, but can you afford to buy the insurance on it?
And having that bond is a reasonable middle ground. I would think it's a lot like having to have a certain amount of auto insurance, right?
That's right. It's the same exact thing.
Right? You have to have a certain amount of coverage.
And then the argument is, but driving a car isn't a constitutional right. Yes, you can go buy
they weren't fucking
a 1789 musket. There weren't cartridges back in 1789. Correct. You want your constitutional right. You want to go back and argue, well, 1789, great. You can have a musket without a license.
My favorite thing in New Orleans, I have to tell you, is the people with the 13 colonies flags on their houses. Because I'm just like,
are you dumb?
Do you realize that we weren't a part of that? Like, not for nothing, but just like
the French still ran.
I was like, New Orleans was literally not in that, right? Like, thank you so much for telling me what a fucking dumbass you are. Like, good to know. But like, every time we walked past the one that was near my house, Zephyr and my son and I would just hysterically laugh. Like, it's just like 1776, man. I'm like, okay, but like, how does that apply to New Orleans? Like, was Louisiana Purchase? You're familiar with it? Like, are we good?
And slavery was very alive and well.
Like, exactly, it's the signal it's sending, but I'm just like, it's like kind of self-owned fucking moron. Like, cool, thanks for letting us know you're a moron and you're racist. Cool.
I was at an event recently, and I can't give too much detail, but there was a person who spoke who was clearly some kind of a liberal. I'm saying that up front because of where I'm about to go with this.
Okay.
So this person had money, owned property. The argument this person made politically was essentially white wealthy landowners should be the only people who vote. And they didn't even realize they were making that argument. They were saying, well, homeowners should be the priority for politicians because we're the ones who spend all the money that gives them the tax revenue. And so they should be listening to us first, more than businesses, more than renters. And I was like, wow, literally, should women vote? I mean, it's like, because you're literally making the argument of the founding fathers that it's the basically wealthy white landowners are the only people who should vote. And that is a legitimate argument in certain people's eyes because they're looking at it so selfishly that why am I spending money on this when I want better this? And I'm the one who's giving all the tax dollars.
But also, like I like that the idea of like this other thing where you guys have to explain this to me. You have to explain this to me in the male culture where it's like this whole new thing is like Roman Empire and Gladiator and Marcus Aurelius and all this shit.
Movies.
Right.
That's a new thing?
Okay. No, it's not a new thing. But those guys, those same guys, okay, in my mind, guys who quote Marcus Aurelius and think of, you know, philosophical stuff and take from Gladiator like the distilled themes of like responsibility and whatever.
Philosophy.
Right, Stoic philosophy, right?
Going on for
the
millennia,
Stoics,
hasn't it?
And then like it has morphed into, and Ethan, you can validate this because we have teenage boys. It has morphed into MAGA voters. I'm like, at what point are you? Where did you miss the message? Where is that breakdown?
So the red pill, that's an interesting point. So I want to take a step back. First off, I am a huge fan of, we had him on the KGO show once.
Ryan Holiday.
We interviewed him on the KGO show.
Yes.
So he's like the leader of that whole Stoic philosophy movement. And actually we should have him as a guest again because he's actually phenomenal. And we should ask him about this specific topic. And I say that because Stoic philosophy is not at all MAGA. Stoic philosophy is about internal locus of control, right? It's about how I control my life and I don't have to react. I don't have to have an opinion. I make myself better. I do it to be a better citizen in society. The red pill, of course, distorts that into hyper masculine attributes that are falsely attributed to being hyper masculinity. Often hyper masculinity is insecurity.
Right.
Whereas stoicism is absolute security because I control me and I know myself and I work on improving myself every day. Red pill isn't about making yourself better. It's about feeling superior to others and asserting dominance in a way that actually is insecurity. That's my 2 cents.
And you can see how the Stoic philosophy could be so easily dumbed down and then manipulated to be sold to those people because they think, I do this all myself and I handle it and somebody else is coming for you and it's me, and I'm that strong and I'm already a Stoic without even thinking about it for a half second, but they could be so manipulated, or that message could be so easily manipulated and twisted.
I like the emphasis of your middle finger there, Dave. As you were shooting.
That's my boss in love language too. Hey, how's everybody?
My boss in love language. Oh my gosh.
That has been my, like, you know, every guy that I've known that's voted for Trump's like, did you see Gladiator 2? Like, although Marcus Aurelius. I'm like, okay. Gladiator 2, I'm sorry, I watched it. Here's my hot take. The CGI monkeys are fucking wild. Like, I was completely taken out of the film by the CGI monkey. I was like, dude, what the fuck? And then there's like sharks in the fucking fish tank. No, that's wrong. That's wild. It's like, it was so fake. First of all, we did not get enough shirtless Paul Mescal. Okay. Number one. Number two, He was like shirtless but constantly being tortured, and I was like, this is boring. And then like weirdly,
Not into that.
no, I was like, come on, we get it. And then it's like every fucking movie that Ridley Scott does is like, you didn't even direct Braveheart, dude, but every film you do has to have the Braveheart speech. Like, I'm done with that.
I'm going to stop you right there. I am a massive Ridley Scott fan. The original Alien, Blade Runner.
Fair enough.
These are some of the greatest movies ever made. And
Gladiator 2 is not it.
Okay, that's I haven't seen it yet, so I can't share my opinion. The original Gladiator is truly also, to me and many of my friends, one of the greatest movies ever made.
Overrated.
It really
is. It is your Bridget Jones. To me, it is the male's Bridget Jones diary. I just like that's what it is.
But I absolutely love that movie.
Overrated on a Lord of the Rings level, the original Gladiator.
You think that? Yeah, I do too. I'm like, I like Gladiator, but I'll watch Braveheart all fucking day. I'd rather see Braveheart all fucking day. Braveheart is my shit.
I thought the original Gladiator, exactly to your point, was a poor man's Braveheart. It just retreaded the same themes. The familial connection wasn't there as much. And I love that stuff, by the way. I'm a classicist. That was a focus of mine in undergrad. Lived in Rome, studied ancient history and Gladiator. Architecture and all that. Love it, love it, love it.
So you're saying fascism runs in your veins, Dave? Is that what you're saying?
Imperialism. I'm the next Caesar coming through, is what it is. Yeah.
I think it's overhyped, but I was also like very, very disappointed. I was like, why does Pedro Pascal have like Burt Reynolds' weird hair in this film the whole time? Like the guy is supposed to be this awesome general, and he's got like styled 80s Burt Reynolds hair. I was like, what the fuck is happening in this film? No, watch Gladiator 2. I was like, I'm so let down. First of all, not enough shirtless Paul Mescal. Not enough shirtless Paul Mescal. Weird CGI shit that was just like, it wasn't even good CGI.
Let's talk about the abuse of CGI and when they run out of budget is really what I think happens. And because Apple TV made the impossible, season 1 of Foundation, Isaac Asimov's Foundation, is an unmakeable TV show, right? You can't make it. It's never been able to be made. It's absolutely impossible. Apple TV spent the money, and season 1 of Foundation was really well done.
I'm a Lee Pace fan all day, and he doesn't even bat for my team.
I know.
I will still get excited about some Lee Pace.
And you know where I stand.
It's my deepest sadness that Lee Pace does not bat for my team. But I also know we are not deserving of Lee Pace. I get it. Like, he's too beautiful.
And I don't bat on Lee Pace's team either. And I was like, how do I not know that this guy is like one of the most incredible actors, physical specimens, just everything else. He's absolutely outrageous. Foundation, season 1, Apple TV spent the money on CGI. Loved it. Watched it with my daughter. Season 2, we waited. Season 2, we watched halfway through the first episode and we're like, fuck this. Apple must have cut the budget because all of a sudden the CGI sucked and it's unwatchable.
But Amazon did the same thing with the Lord of the Rings thing they just did. That was like the worst piece of trash I have watched. And I'm like, I like nerdy shit. I will get into some Lord of the Rings lore. They spent, I think, like $1 billion or something ridiculous on this show, almost $1 billion. And it's basically dark. It's like the complaint at the last season of Game of Thrones where the lighting is dark and you're like, where are the fucking ice wizards, guys?
Did you see Nosferatu?
I haven't seen it. You can't see it. Why can you not see anything?
Can't see anything.
Why is everything so fucking dark?
I literally am sitting in the movie theater with my son. We're watching this movie. We're in a good theater. We're at like the Santa Monica AMC or whatever, which is, by the way, I know you can say what you want to say. The AMC was lovely. It's gorgeous theater. It was
those are good theaters. Yep.
Good theater.
Good theater.
I still prefer the Grove or the Century City one, but we're there and I'm watching Nosferatu and I'm like taking off my glass and being like, have I gone blind? Have I gone blind? Because I couldn't, they made it so dark. There were scenes I'm just like, I'm sure this is great acting. And I mean, Bill Skarsgård is incredible. He's an incredible actor.
He is.
Willem Dafoe is one of the all-time greatest, right? And it's like, truly. I can't see what you're fucking doing. So why are you making this movie?
I know that it's harder for me to see in the dark as I get older, but I'm watching every fucking show now. Like, do I need to put the brightness on my computer or whatever? Everything is like maxed out. Like, I can't see shit. And I'm like, I think I'm falling asleep on half the shows I'm watching because everything is so dark. But actually, honestly, the Wheel of Time on Amazon was good. That one was good. But Lord of the Rings prequel thingy is just absolute garbage. And it's like, and you can't see it. So it's like, that sucks. And I don't know what's going on. But like, then my son has the balls to do this. He goes, I want to go see the new Craven because I love Aaron Taylor Johnson because he's hot as shit. And he's like, nah, it looks terrible. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? I've literally sat through 10 fucking years of the worst goddamn films that every Marvel movie ever fucking made. Like, what are you talking about? I had to go see fucking planes in the theater. We can't go see Aaron Taylor Johnson be hot for like 10 fucking minutes because you've decided it didn't get a good Rotten Tomato score. I was like, that's cock blocking, which is now the thing that's happening with my son. And he goes, this is where I was going to tell you about the Mel Brooks thing. I'm like, I can't just go see Aaron Taylor Johnson be hot. Okay, that's fucked up. And then he goes, I mean, maybe that movie will be so bad, it'll be like Cats, where it's funny bad. I'm like, okay. He's like, or like Spaceballs. I was like, oh, stop.
Wait, what did he say?
He goes, yeah, like Spaceballs. That's a terrible film. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Did you just say that? And he goes, what?
I kick him out of the house.
Did you just say Spaceballs was a bad movie? He goes, yeah, that's a terrible film. I'm like, I'm about to throw you into the Seine. I was like, do you know what it's like to swim in this Seine? Because you're about to find out. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, Mel Brooks. Like, what? I've realized we have failed our children. Most of us. I definitely have.
Yeah,
they don't understand that comment. A lot of their age group doesn't understand Mel Brooks humor. They don't get it. They think it's bad.
I was going to wonder that. I could actually kind of see that coming because there's something I love it, but it feels like it's, sort of on the older edge of the stuff that I would enjoy. And the stuff that there's just a sort of comedic style that would then be a little bit older than that I still might laugh at, that my dad would love, but really isn't my style. Fuck? So yeah,
he compared Cats with Judi Dench like licking her vagina in a costume.
Wait, I never saw it. Who did
what? Oh my God, Cats is the worst film that has ever been made. And they've got CGI Judi Dench like licking herself, like cleaning herself. And I was like, I'm out. I'm 100% out on this film. I love Judi Dench. She is a goddamn gem. But you guys, like, she should sue you for being in that movie.
James Corden lick himself too?
Yes, everybody. And like Jason Derulo's in there, like as a cat, like Jason Derulo, I'm a cat. Like it's fucking awful. The whole thing.
Wait. What about this Robbie Williams movie that's coming out where he's a monkey?
I actually think that's funny. I'm fine with that. Like I actually think that's funny.
Hang on.
I love Robbie.
How many people in the United States know who Robbie Williams is?
None. And how many people in the United States that turned Robbie Williams down for a night in his hotel room?
What? Sorry, Crissy. So Dave claimed that, I remember Dave saying something about Amy Schumer, and now you're saying Robbie Williams.
Yep.
And Amy Schumer would go for Dave? I 100% believe that.
Yeah.
I am telling you, Robbie Williams came into Kiss FM in 1999, and I was dating a guy named Adam, who was a waiter, whose only claim to fame is that he could gamble really well. And I turned down Robbie Williams' offer in front of my friend Chris, who is there as my fucking God is my witness.
We need Chris on the phone right now.
We can get Chris on the phone. We will get him. And Chris has a great story too. He used to be a backup dancer for Madonna, so he's got a great story. But he's got probably a lot to tell. Robbie Williams doesn't really, I don't think he translates very well.
Nope.
And it's a British or people who've lived abroad like Robbie Williams, or they are like more connected with UK culture. Australians love Robbie Williams. He does not, He tried. I mean, I was there at Kiss
He
FM
tried
when he was
multiple times.
trying. He was
Yeah.
trying to make it in America, but he can sell out stadiums anywhere else in the world.
Well, he's huge. He's absolutely huge. But here he never made it. We never connected with him. I really did like that song that he was probably promoting at Kiss FM in '99 called Millennium.
Millennium is a great song. That whole album is fantastic. I know it by heart.
I bought the album, actually.
The album's great. Yeah.
It's
and
fascinating
I thought
how
it
that's
was
happened.
too.
Oh, that's happened with a couple of people. Robbie Williams is one. Kylie Minogue, right, who like had
Kylie
like
Minogue,
a little blip
Craig
of fame
David.
in the States, but have been huge in Europe forever, right? And
Yeah,
just had no
Kylie
staying power.
Yeah, Kylie, I think, got embraced by like American gay culture, but like
She did 100%.
Not really that much beyond it. And it's like, I lived in Australia. I know Kylie is their queen of everything, right? So, and in the UK and in Europe, like Kylie can still do stadium shows. But yeah, I don't know what Robbie Williams' Monkey movie is going to bomb, but I'll probably still go see it.
Yeah, but you're in Paris.
And I'm biased.
And you're biased. Because you're now like, damn it, why? Adam, son of a bitch.
That's what Chris goes. Chris goes, literally, Adam's a fucking loser. What are you doing? And I'm like, he's made.
No, which is good, of course. But
is it?
What?
He dumped me, so fuck him.
Fuck him, Adam.
But yeah, I think the male culture thing, by the way, just is like that whole like connecting the Stoic philosophy, which I would love it if more men were connected to Stoic philosophy and could understand that. That would be, I think, make our culture better. But it's been twisted into this weird thing, and I'm just like, how did that happen?
I bought one of Ryan Holiday's books for my son.
It's a great book for him to read. I mean, like,
Yeah.
Even if they only at 16 and 17, like, understand half of it or are able to have deep
1%
conversations,
of it. Yeah.
Whatever, it's still better than not, right? It's like, why are we letting our sons watch Andrew Tate? Not that we're letting, but we're allowing them to take that and absorb it and try to critical think Andrew Tate's nonsense, but like they can't figure out Ryan Holiday.
God, that's opening a whole nother world when you bring up Tate and by the way,
another molester.
Those red pill algorithms, that we've talked about, they, as I recently found out, and I won't go into any detail about it at this minute, they don't just target boys.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, there's a lot of women who I hear and see and meet now that I am like, holy shit, you are not a feminist. You don't even like women. Like, you are voting against us. Like, there is, again, it's that, like, I just think it's all Animal Farm, because it's like, you can't just say one sex is better than the other. They're not, unfortunately, right?
We biologically have certain strengths and weaknesses compared to each other.
But I think the last election showed us a lot of women were not on team women be free.
It's just true. It's very interesting, I want to make this point very clear. I absolutely respect and support women who want to, follow a traditional faith that they choose as their lifestyle, right? I want to dress like, I want to follow these rules, whatever. But often that is not the case. Like we started with, where you're subjugated into a certain position. It's kind of like, again, it's back to the idea of abortion. If you don't like it, don't get one.
Correct.
And by the way, if you're completely anti-abortion, and I think I've mentioned this, I have extended family members, anti-abortion to the ends of the world, and they've adopted.
Correct.
So I'm like, okay, you absolutely have a right to have that position then.
That's
because
right.
you actually made the effort, you've adopted, and you've loved these children, and okay then. But it's when you're like, no abortion. But by the way, cut all food stamps programs, no
access
Medicaid,
to healthcare.
all right. It's like, you just hate people and you're a liar.
Christian co-op version of health insurance, where it was like, we're like-minded, we're values. And then what happened was they didn't really read the frying pan. I would hate to make this pun, but the devil was in the details for these people. And they didn't see that the majority of these Christian co-op health insurance do not allow for. So this family that the article was about was basically like, oh, we had no idea that it didn't really cover the birth of our child. And we've been fighting and asking them to have any type of humanity because we're like-minded people. And I'm like, no. There was no fucking humanity when you use Christianity as a way to profit. Like, get the fuck out of here. You guys self-owned yourself in that, because you believed in something that seeks to oppress those. None of those insurance companies, those Christian co-ops, allow for pregnancies, mental health.
They don't cover it, you mean?
They won't cover it, right? So they don't cover pregnancies unless it was like your second child and you've already paid into a fuckload of it, like way more than a year. Some not at all. No coverage for mental health. No coverage for, obviously, for birth control, right? Because that would be against the religion. But then you have these shooters that are men who are suffering clearly with mental health issues, particularly the guy that blew up the Tesla truck. And we have a group, we have a well-known problem in America of men's mental health, but the Christians and their co-op of health insurance don't want to cover that either. And then we've got people who, experience deep trauma that could benefit from mental health, even if it was just their parish providing them with a counselor. That doesn't happen either. Like, it's like no one's taking care of anybody. Like, so if you got scammed by your Christian co-op, then you need to have a look at like your group in general.
Right. Well, so I have two parts on that. One is our elder child was born before Obamacare, and health insurance wasn't going to cover the cost of childbirth. And what people don't understand is it in places like LA, if everything goes perfectly well, if it's a perfect childbirth, it's $50,000.
Correct. My C-section was $65,000.
Yeah. And how long ago was that, right?
2008.
Right. That's my point. And so now imagine what that would cost. So that was a key part of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, was that you had to cover childbirth. Boy, if you're pro-life, you would think that we need to ensure that your insurance that we all pay into as a co-op, I mean, that's really the origin, like we talked about in last week's episode, but to not cover childbirth is insane. And I know people who bought into this. I don't know if it's this one specifically, but
you do.
Absolutely.
Some of this religious co-op insurance.
Yeah, because they're super religious. They don't support anything to do with abortion or birth control or, again, not based. By the way, that's not based in your religion. I just want everybody to know that that's not. That is humans who have taken advantage of that to create a wedge issue for their own purposes. But it doesn't actually say that. I love having this debate with people who always want to send me stuff. And all I have to do is point back to the Old Testament, which says that an unborn child is worth a thigh bone. So if you kill an unborn child, you owe some money, and that's about it. It's not a life. It's not equivalent to a life. It's just absolute. And that's fine. If you want to believe that, that's okay that you believe it, but don't pass laws to force everybody else to have to deal with your odd belief that's not actually rooted in your religion. So it's been made up to be part of your religion. Congratulations that you're a sucker like everybody else, allegedly. So, but yeah, no, it's a real issue. We have the cost of childbirth. We have people getting ripped off. The mental health care, though, is just so off the charts. I don't know if I mentioned to you, I was in the elevator with a guy who teaches psychiatry at one of the local, very well-known major universities here in LA. And I was talking to him about the issues of mental health care. I'm on the board of the Community Veteran Justice Project. This is an issue I've been worried about for a long time and focused on. And I said, do we have enough students in the pipeline to get people the psychiatric care that they need? Not even close.
I do think it's important that we can take this discussion and continue it because I also do think that not that women aren't important, but men's mental health, having a teenage son and seeing so much in the world, I think that should be something that we talk about more in depth, particularly because I can talk to you both as men from different, like Dave, you're a single guy, Ethan, you're a dad, not that you would have different points of views on it, but just in general, the male culture. I'm trying to, as my promise to myself after Trump won, is to try and understand men more because they were the linchpin part of Trump's reelection. And I'm trying to understand it versus be angry about it, right?
That's a big conversation. I can't wait we do have to have a special episode just of that then, because that's a big one. And there's a lot to be said about it. I mean, So also for those who are watching or listening, you can comment. So whether you're in Spotify, we have a comment section, YouTube, we have a contact page on our webpage, should be a morningshow.com. Follow, give us notes on social media where you have the shop, should be a morningshow.com. I would love to hear from you as well. And we'll incorporate where we find appropriate, of course, your comments. But I believe even on the Spotify side, there's a way to even leave a voice message for us as well. Yeah. So we want to hear from you too, and really appreciate you all taking the time. Dave, Crissy, love to you and your family. We'll talk when our next episode goes up.
Braveheart's a better film.
100%.
And we're going to do a Lord of the Rings marathon now, just for you.
Good.
All right, guys.
Bedtime. Sounds good. Helps.
Dang. We'll continue the conversation.
Wish they could darken that as much as the, if only Lord of the Rings had the brightness turned down so you couldn't see it, and then it would have been perfect for nap time in the company.
Oh, look at that. We're out of time, Dave. Just like that. See you next time, guys.